There's a voice inside you that never grew up. It doesn't scream. It whispers, softly, but every day. It says things no one else hears, but you feel it in your body. That strange emptiness on a Sunday night. A sadness without a name. A quiet fear that freezes you for no reason. It shows up when you try to be too strong, when you pretend you don't need anyone, or when you break down over something small, and then feel ashamed. Have you ever wondered why some pain just won't go away? Why some parts of you feel out of place in time, like missing something that never even happened, or feeling a need that no one else's love seems to fix? That's because a part of you got left behind, and it didn't agree to be forgotten. It stayed right there, waiting, still here, so small, so scared, so angry, still needing to be held. But it learned not to ask, so it started to sabotage, to manipulate, to run, to hide behind, "I'm fine." The part of you you've been hiding is the same one begging for you in your darkest moments. It's not trying to destroy you, it just wants to be seen. Maybe it's time to stop running from yourself. Some days, it feels like you're not the one making the decisions, like there's something smaller than you, more fragile, more desperate, gripping the steering wheel of your life with trembling hands. And the scariest part is, it doesn't scream, it whispers. It hides in your silence, in your overreactions, in your fear of being left behind again. You realize you're living too much to defend yourself and too little to just live. And you start asking yourself, why am I like this? That part pulling you back every time you try to move forward is real. It's not made up. It's a part of your psyche left alone in a dark corner of your personal unconscious, as if it was too weak to come along with you. But it never left. It just learned to survive the only way it could, by sabotaging, by repeating unconscious patterns, by reacting as if every pain was a life threat. It's not evil. It's just tired of being ignored. In Jungian psychology, this has a name, shadow. But unlike what most people think, the shadow isn't a monster. It's everything you had to hide in order to keep being loved. And the child you once were, with all their repressed desires and swallowed pain, became one of those hidden parts of the self. That child still lives inside you, and sometimes they take over, not because they want to, but because they need to. Because the grown-up you still doesn't know how to listen. That unconscious behavior that seems to come out of nowhere. It doesn't. It comes from your unprocessed past, from that old loneliness that turned into a complex. It comes from your fear of responsibility, not because you're weak, but because no one ever showed you what it's like to feel safe without having to fight. It comes from a desperate attempt to protect the part of you that still shivers, in the dark, and so it acts out. It's hard to accept that so many things you call flaws are actually survival strategies, that your impulses, your avoidance, your fears are signs of a psyche trying to self-regulate, trying to find balance in the middle of an emotional battlefield. And maybe you've never looked at that part of yourself with kindness. Maybe you learned to hate it every time it showed up, but all it wants is to be held. That child didn't grow up because they were never given space to be. They were repressed, corrected, erased. But the psyche doesn't delete what's essential. It recalculates, compensates, adapts. And when you least expect it, that hidden self shows up in the middle of an argument, in a cry you don't understand, or in that urge to disappear. It's the wounded part begging to be seen, and that's not weakness. That's the beginning of your inner journey. As long as you try to silence this whisper with logic, discipline, or pressure, it will only grow louder. Because this isn't about control. It's about recognition, about realizing you're not alone, that there's an inner child tired of fighting abandonment, and they'll only let go of the wheel when they feel that finally a real adult is in charge, one who's ready to love, not punish, what's lost inside. There are pains you feel without knowing where they come from. You just notice they always hurt the same way, as if part of you never moved on. It's a sadness without a date, a fear that feels too old to have started now. And when you try to understand it, all you find is silence. A silence filled with erased memories, as if Your own body had hidden them to protect you from feeling too much. The truth is, the unconscious doesn't erase pain. It stores it, and what hasn't been digested comes back. It returns as patterns, unconscious behavior, choices you keep repeating without knowing why. It's like a piece of your childhood is still alive inside you, frozen in a time no one wanted to see. And that piece keeps trying to be heard, even if it has to sabotage, run away, shut down, or explode to get your attention. Because an ignored child will always find a way to speak. In Jungian psychology, this is called the shadow. All the parts of the psyche that were repressed in order to survive. The disowned parts of the self, the emotions labeled as wrong, the traumas no one helped you name. When these fragments aren't welcomed, they form complexes that operate beneath your choices. And you start blaming yourself for acting in ways you didn't mean to, for feeling things you think you shouldn't, for repeating wounds you swore you'd avoid, as if you're stuck in a childhood that never really ended. These internal conflicts don't mean you're weak. They mean something inside you is still waiting for care, and that something isn't just a memory, it's a living presence. The psyche doesn't divide time like the mind does. To the psyche, the past keeps pulsing if it hasn't been integrated. That's why you often react like you're defending yourself from an old threat, even when you're facing something new. Unprocessed pain seeps into the present like a ghost. This is where shame grows, because you catch yourself acting like someone you don't even recognize. You shut down, blame yourself, try to control the uncontrollable. But what you need isn't more control, it's more compassion. Because behind the behavior that embarrasses you, there's a wounded child trying to survive with whatever tools they have. And that child won't stop screaming until you stop pretending they don't exist. You can't heal a wound you pretend is already closed. You can't move forward when parts of you are still trapped in the past. The collective unconscious may carry inherited patterns, but your personal experience shapes how those patterns unfold. And if you don't look honestly at your own story, it will keep repeating itself, as if it's begging you, with every pain, please see me. Because what hurts in you today might not even belong to this moment. Maybe it's the echo of a no you heard when you were too small to understand, but big enough to carry it forever. Maybe it's the weight of a stop crying that taught you not to feel. Maybe it's the emptiness of never having been truly seen. And all of that still lives inside you, even if it hides behind exhaustion, irritation, or loneliness. But I promise you, if you really listen, you'll hear it. That childhood is still asking to be held. Have you noticed how hard you try to seem okay? Not just online, but at home, in the mirror, in your own head. As if being an adult means always being strong, stable, ready. As if feeling fear, exhaustion, or confusion means you've failed somehow. And so, you put on the persona. This social mask that smiles on the outside while hiding a trembling child on the inside. A child who once believed they'd only be loved if they were perfect. The persona isn't fake, it's functional. It helps us interact, work, connect. But when it turns into armor, you start confusing protection with truth. And you forget that behind that image of the healed adult, there's still a part of you that never stopped hurting. The psyche is layered, and denying your inner child's pain doesn't erase it. It just pushes it somewhere else. And when pain has no room to be felt, it finds a disguise. It becomes sarcasm, rigidity, coldness, the need to control everything. In Jungian psychology, this is part of the shadow, the aspects of the psyche the ego tries to reject in order to protect its ideal image. And the persona, when it hardens, becomes a way to hide those disowned parts of the self. You don't feel less, you just feel in secret. And that secrecy builds pressure. Because the unconscious doesn't like being ignored for long. It compensates, it returns, it speaks through your actions, especially when you're trying the hardest to seem fine. That's how complexes are born. Emotions trapped in time that show up unannounced, causing reactions you don't even understand. And then you judge yourself for being immature, when really you're responding from a place that was never truly healed. The ego's ideal says you should be past this, But psychic wholeness asks for reconciliation, not performance. It asks for presence, not perfection. You don't have to stop being an adult to embrace the child. You just need to stop pretending the child is gone, because maturity isn't exile. It's coexistence. It's knowing that even now, there's a part of you still asking to be held, and that asking doesn't make you weak. On the contrary, it makes you real. It shows that the psyche is wise, not when it represses, but when it integrates, not when it denies, but when it listens. The inner child isn't an obstacle to your growth. They're part of the path. And the more you try to hide them behind perfect routines, rehearsed phrases, or polished balance, the more they try to break free, because they weren't born to be silenced. They are your living memory of sensitivity, your ability to imagine, create, and feel deeply. And no adult is whole if they keep amputating the part of themselves that feels too much. So next time, you pressure yourself to be stronger, colder, more consistent, pause and ask, who's demanding I be this way? Is it really maturity? Or is it fear of seeming fragile? Because maybe what you need most right now isn't to keep the image alive, but to finally free the truth behind it. And if you feel like going a little deeper, I carefully prepared a gift for you. It may look small on the outside, but it goes deep. It was made for those quiet moments when you suddenly notice you're here, but not really present. You're breathing, but not really alive. Inside, you won't find answers or fixes, but you might find a way back to the parts of you that got left behind, back to the gentle voice you stopped listening to, back to your true self, the one that still remembers who you are, not a better version of yourself, not a new version of yourself, just a whole version of yourself. You'll find the link to your gift right there in the pinned comment. So, if your soul is tired of moving through life without really feeling it, if your soul is tired of waking up and not knowing why, click the link now. There are moments when the soul doesn't want an explanation. It just wants to be held. It just wants someone to sit close, breathe alongside, and listen without trying to fix anything. And maybe that someone has to be you, because the child that lives inside your psyche, that part of your shadow that cries in hiding, has already been interrupted too many times, already judged, rushed, silenced. And all they're asking now is, listen to me, really listen, without fixing, without trying to force me to grow. True listening doesn't follow a script. It begins when you stop answering and start feeling, when you stop treating your pain like a problem and begin seeing it as a living part of your story. Jungian psychology doesn't speak of eliminating the shadow. It speaks of integrating it. And that begins with presence, with silence that holds, with time that doesn't rush, with the willingness to stay, even when what shows up feels too much. Maybe you've never been listened to like that. Maybe that's why you think you have to be hard on yourself. But the truth is, no one heals by force. What transforms pain isn't the effort to resist. It's the courage to look, to let the unconscious express itself through sudden tears, strange dreams, or memories that resurface. The psyche speaks in symbols, images, impulses, and when you start truly listening, it responds. It's in that quiet space that the reconciliation of opposites begins. The adult you are today can sit with the child you once were, without yelling, without shutting them down. You can ask, what do you need right now? And wait for the answer, even if it comes in silence, because the unconscious doesn't use words, it uses sensation. And sometimes the most healing embrace is simply the one that stays, that doesn't demand change, that doesn't ask for progress, that just loves. The inner journey passes through this space, where you stop trying to defeat your shadow and begin walking alongside it, where you realize that integration isn't about control, it's about care. That listening without fixing doesn't mean giving in to chaos. It means trusting the intelligence of the psyche, which knows the right time for every healing. And it all starts when you stop being your own punisher and start becoming your own home. The child within you doesn't need scolding. They need space, softness, a present adult who can look them in the eye and say, I'm here, even if you cry, even if you fall apart, Even if you mess up, I'm here. Because now I understand. What was missing wasn't strength. It was care. And I choose to care. Listening without fixing is an act of love. It's when the shadow stops being a threat and becomes a bridge. When pain stops being noise and becomes language. When you stop treating yourself like an enemy and begin, finally, to belong to yourself. There's a kind of strength that's born when you stop running from yourself. When instead of erasing the past, you sit with it. You listen. You offer it a glass of water. Because growing up, truly, isn't about killing the wounded child. It's about giving them a safe place inside you. Real maturity isn't forced silence, cold control, or emotional distance. It's that moment when the adult and the child recognize each other and choose to walk side by side without fighting anymore. In Jungian psychology, this meeting is part of what's called psychic wholeness, the union of opposites, the reconciliation of the ego with everything that had to be exiled so you could survive. The shadow, the pain, the repressed desires, all the things that once looked like weakness were simply your humanity. The psyche's transcendent function happens right there, when you no longer reject what you feel, but turn unconscious pain into conscious presence. Integrating the inner child doesn't mean going back to the past. It means accepting that they're part of the present, that your sensitivity, your creativity, your impulses aren't flaws, they're guides, emotional compasses. When you stop blaming yourself for feeling too much, dreaming too much, needing too much, you start to understand that the psyche doesn't malfunction. It just needs to be heard more gently. And when that listening becomes practice, something truly shifts. You begin to trust yourself, not because you've erased all conflict, but because you've made peace with it. You learn to protect yourself without turning hard, to love yourself without hiding, to care for yourself as someone who welcomes, not punishes. That's inner alchemy, turning the lead of pain into the gold of presence. And it only happens when you admit that your story matters, that your child's self is still alive, and that they don't want to take over anymore. They just want to walk with you. This inner journey has no clear finish line, because integration isn't a destination. It's a way of living, a daily commitment to your truth, to your whole humanity. And if you've come this far, maybe you've already felt it. The child who used to take control wasn't weak. They were just alone. And now that you see them, hear them, care for them, something inside you aligns, as if finally you've come home. And coming home is exactly that. Growing without abandoning, being an adult without losing tenderness, being strong without having to hide what you feel. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new, it's about becoming whole again. And if something I said reminded you of your own story or stirred something inside you, feel free to share it in the comments. I'd really love to hear it. What you have to say matters, not just to me, but maybe to someone else who's going through something similar. Sometimes, putting it into words is already part of the healing. If something inside you still wants to understand yourself, there's another video waiting for you on the screen. And maybe what's in there is exactly what you've been needing to hear. Click it, if that's where your soul is asking to go.